Hola, estudiantes! Welcome to Chapter 6.4a, using equations to find the part. In all honesty, we usually work percent problems this way, although you can still work them as proportions, and truthfully on the test, they'll expect you to do both. Now, just like I told you, it was very important to know and to remember that percent over 100 equals part over whole. It's going to be very important for you to remember that the percent written as a decimal or a fraction times the whole is going to equal the part. So get out that highlighter and highlight that. Now this is something else you need to remember. So for proportions, it's percent over 100 equals part over whole. For equations, it's percent as a decimal or fraction times the whole equals the part. Again, write it down somewhere, get an index card, keep it handy so that you can go over it and over it and over it. Now, that's not supposed to happen. Let's try this again. Now let's look at example A. Here's my percent, but remember I want to write it as a decimal or a fraction. Now this goes back to an earlier lesson in this chapter, so 13% is 0.13. My same clue word works for whole with equations as it does for proportions of the whole. This time I know the whole. I don't know what it's equal to right offhand, so that's going to be my variable n. This is where I use a calculator. I take the n to the left side to do my answer. Then I take into my calculator, I just put 0.13 times 126 equals 16.38. Another way they have of writing that is in example B, where here's my percent, here's that word of again, so here's the whole, and then that same clue word from proportions is, tells me that the next thing that's coming is the part. Or sometimes it'll say what number is, so then you kind of have to reverse it. Look for the of, look for the percent. 0.28 times 17 equals, is, by the way, gets replaced with equals, n. Now I put it through my calculator, n will equal 4.76. So at this time, hit pause and you do example C. And I've shown you how to work example C. Hopefully you got it right. Now, one of the things we have to keep in mind, if you remember back to when I talked about proportions, that the word part can refer to a tax. A sales tax is part of that. So one of the things they're going to be asking you to do is calculating the sales tax on various amounts. So let's look at example D. Fern bought a hairdryer for $32. That's how much the hairdryer costs. This is like an original price or the total price, so that means it's a whole. The sales tax rate. A tax rate means the percent is coming, and there it is. Now to calculate the sales tax, I'm going to change 4.9 to 0.049 times my purchase, my total purchase, my whole purchase, which is $32, equals n. Using that calculator, we may have to round off. Now remember, we're dealing with money, so that means we're going to have to round off to the nearest hundredth, because we work in dollars and in cents. And it should round off to $1.57 for the sales tax. All right, example E is very similar to F, so hit pause and you work example E. Did you get example E right? I hope so. Now this amount would then be added to the $29,879 when you're going to buy a new car. Another thing that part may be is a commission, which is the percent of a sale amount that is earned as income. This happens especially in real estate. It can happen in insurance. It sometimes happens in certain kinds of sales, but it certainly happens a lot in real estate. We are going to take a percent of the sale. There's that word of again. So how much the house cost is going to be the whole. How much their sales were is going to be a whole. For example, let's say that you are a traveling salesperson and you sell copy machine usage. They're going to give you a commission on how much you sell. So the amount of your sales, your total amount of sales, is going to be your whole. So try to think in terms of, is this a total amount? Because if it's a total amount, then it's going to be a whole. Now here's my percent, and here is the total amount the house is worth, $112,800. So Fred is going to have to take 0.065 times 112,800 equals N. Yes, we use the N. We're dealing in money. And Fred is going to have to pay that realtor $7,332 for selling his house. So if he gets the whole 112,800, you're going to have to subtract 7,332 to pay the realtor. Okay? You try G. Did you get G correct? The percent times the whole. The total amount of his sales were $16,000. The commission is going to be the percent of that. So that also tells you that you multiply, because here you're taking 8% of. That of also means multiply. And this concludes Lesson 6-4A. Scouting out.